New Scotland Yard, London, England, an address that is known worldwide. Headquarters of the Metropolitan Police, guardians of the capital city against crime. In the marbled lobby, an eternal flame burns in memory of those members of the civil staff who have given their lives in both world wars, together with a book of honour in which is recorded the names of police officers who have lost their lives in the course of duty. And in a quiet corner of the building, a place where legend becomes fact that I would like to tell you about. But it is for the Deputy Commissioner to invite you in.
Here in the Yard is one of the police museums that many have heard of, but few have visited. It's an unusual museum and started life in 1875, when it was decided to keep certain items of property seized in connection with crime to instruct the young detectives of the then relatively new Detective Department of Scotland Yard. It was not too long before the press gave this collection of somewhat macabre artifacts the unofficial title of the Black Museum. And so it's remained over the years, exhibiting the darker side of human nature, instructing the professional policeman and the lawyer, and intriguing the layman by its very name and remoteness. We've never opened the doors of the Black Museum to the general public, and all visits have been by way of invitation and always highly prized. The exhibits range from the apparently insignificant to the spectacular, and from the hardly known to the infamous, whose names are known throughout the world. They have in common one thing: supreme importance to the history of crime and the criminal, as you will see.
Among the exhibits in the famous murders display is one collection that might best be described as Murder of the Famous, because the victim was a face well known on both cinema and television screens in the 60s and 70s, that of actor Peter Arne. It was on the 1st of August 1983 that police were called to his apartment in Hans Place in London, close to Hyde Park. There was no sign of forced entry, but the entry phone was off the hook, the walls were spattered with blood, Peter Arne's body sprawled in the kitchen doorway. Also in the hallway, that blood-stained log of wood, which is one of the court exhibits now rests in the museum. Just see if from these and the police scene of crime photographs, you are able to deduce what must have happened on that fateful day. Peter Arne had been battered with this log and this stool. Both carried his blood. But death had been assured by a stab wound from this kitchen knife, which had severed the carotid artery. In the sitting room were 2 cups of coffee on the table, together with a half-eaten jar of honey, a sleeping bag on the floor, together with clothing not belonging to the dead man, but covered in his blood. Peter Arne was a kind man, known to befriend down-and-outs and give them a chance to clean up and enjoy a decent meal. Was it amongst them that his murderer was to be found? Detectives began house-to-house inquiries and discovered several people who had seen a man hanging about in Hans Place, a bearded, scruffy man with flame-red hair. Someone saw him sitting on a step, spooning honey from a jar. The postman recalled a bearded man approaching him who spoke hardly any English, asking what sounded like where Peter lives, but no more than that. A photofit impression of the bearded man was made up and published worldwide. It was shown on a crime television program and was seen by an off-duty river policeman whose boat only that day had been called to recover the naked body of a man from the River Thames. The officer picked up the phone and rang the murder squad. On the banks of the Thames, not far from where the body was recovered, was found a pile of clothing. It too was stained with Peter Arne's blood. At the Westminster Coroner's Court, London, on the 19th of October 1983, a double inquest was held, and the coroner returned a verdict that in case 1, Peter Arne had been unlawfully killed, and in case 2, Italian-born Giuseppe Peruzzi, for that was the drowned man's name, had committed suicide in remorse for having done so. But what on earth had provoked Peruzzi into murdering his benefactor? Could it be that, having enjoyed his hospitality, Peruzzi wanted to prolong it? That, kind man though he was, Peter Arne said that was not possible? That an argument developed? And Peruzzi, not a stable character at the best of times, had grabbed that log of wood from the unlit fire and repeatedly struck Peter Arne? That Peter Arne had tried to escape down the hallway, but followed by an enraged Peruzzi had stumbled and knocked the entryphone from the wall? That from loss of blood he'd staggered or been dragged back towards the kitchen, where Peruzzi had grabbed the first thing to hand and stabbed him with a kitchen knife. And as the pathologist has suggested, Peruzzi continued to batter his victim with the kitchen stool long after he was dead. Is that how you think it happened? Only two people know if you are right: Peter Arne and Giuseppe Peruzzi.